Right. Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started here. It's 7 o'clock, and being an old lazy college professor like I used to be, I always like to start on time and end early. So that's just kind of the way I do things. So I want to welcome evening. We're going to start out the way that we normally start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to sing America the Beautiful this evening. So if you feel able to do so, you can stand for this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, beautiful for saints, the skies for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains and to see above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crowned thy good with brother from sea to shining sea. Thank you all very much. It's so nice to see so many smiling faces, but don't forget that we do ask that people, if they are ill or immunocompromised or not vaccinated or not immunized, that they continue to wear a mask, and we will promise not to cough in your direction. So please be nice to the folks who wear a mask. I just got a note from my niece saying that we're going on vacation, and of course, so she's going to be masking up along with her kids. So she just wanted to let us know before we got up there. Good thing to know. We have a secretary's report, but the secretary isn't here, but she provided it, so I'll read it. This is from our May 10th meeting. The May 10th, 2021 general meeting of the Mason Area Historical Society was called to order at 7 p.m. with the Pledge of Allegiance and all saying, "This land is your land." President Doug Klein made announcements about the upcoming programs and acknowledged the meeting sponsors: LFA Farmers Market, Mason Family Eye Care, and Fiedler Insurance. He told members about the new displays and exhibits. Prominent local historian Sandy Perry presented the program about the evolution of the East Maple block. The 100 block of East Maple, north of the Ingham County Courthouse, was once the address of the Ingham County Jail. Sandy told of the different owners and what businesses were in the storefronts on that block. The most prominent feature at the east end of the block is now the Mason First Presbyterian Church. The old stone church was built with field stones from farmers' fields in the Mason area. The ones they didn't use, obviously, for foundations in the barns, right? And says the first stone that was delivered was from John Rayner from Rayner Park. The ladies of the church created a cookbook to help pay for the church. We sell a copy of that cookbook here at the museum. In 1900, 25 stonemasons built the entire church in just one summer. The program was most interesting, and we thank Sandy Perry for her presentation, submitted by Kathy Pinko, secretary. We also have our treasurer here this evening to give us a quick update on the first part of the year where we spend more money than we take in. Go ahead. Yeah, that's right. We got to do a little catch up. One of the things the board wanted me to, a couple things the board wanted me to mention to you this evening, besides our upcoming programs, which I'll talk about in a moment. One is that we're going to begin our refreshments next month with our next month's meeting, and we're looking for volunteers to help us with that. Annie, raise your hand, Annie. Stand up, Annie. Anyway, Annie's in the back. She'll be glad to talk with Annie about helping us. Or Patricia, yes, she's on our hospitality group also. We got the two hostesses with the mostesses. We also want to remind you that we will be sometime later this year and beginning and hopefully next year, we're going to have to do a renovation of the Pink School. So we'll be doing a major fundraising job this next year to do that. But I do want to point out to those of you who haven't been here for a while, okay, and we did have 2 meetings in here so far with limited attendance, but we have new windows. The new windows were paid for by Dart Foundation and installed with thanks to a bequest that we received. So that's with Pink School. So you'll hear more about that later. If you did not receive a copy of the Slate newsletter in the mail, we don't have your address. Okay, number one. Number two, it's on our website if you would like to see a copy of it. We also have a few, I brought a few with me. So if you want to see me after the meeting, I'd be glad to give you one. But there are a few things in that newsletter I want to point out to you now that we've got a paper one that we got back out in the mail. We haven't had it for a while. The first thing is just some general information, including the fact that the government again this year is going to give a tax break for people who do not itemize for up to $300 for a nonprofit. Several of our members did that last year and were able to take that $300 off their taxes. So there's information in here about that. If you want to know more, let me know. Also, information on our program that we've got coming up. This is the one that's going to be in July on the interurban. So we have some information about the interurban in there. On August 7th, we have the Ingham County Historical Commission going to be putting on a program, it's a forum type thing with discussion right here in the main museum about one-room schools in Ingham County. They have lots of things to display and to talk to you about, and also they want to hear from you too. So it's a conversation during that time. The next page is page 4 is our upcoming meetings, and I'll go through those real quickly with you because you can't read them from here. The meeting that we're having this evening with Jim in August, on August 11th, we'll be having a meeting about the Great Hogsback, the Mason Esker, and that'll be from Ralph Taggart. Professor Taggart is an expert in that kind of geology. He'll tell us a little bit more about the main geological feature of the Mason area. Next thing we have in here is the books and publications that we have available. Very soon, we're going to be able to let people donate to the society, donate to the museum, and buy publications online. We're working on it, okay? Once we get a stable website, we hope to be able to do that. 2 forums besides the one on the schools are going to come up. One is going to be at the beginning of September and one later on in September. The first one is going to be about reading with Dick and Jane. So many of us grew up learning how to read with Dick and Jane. I know I did. And so we'll have a little presentation. We're going to do that one at the Pink School because we got a big Dick and Jane book there. So really cool. The next one is on the Mason Boy Scouts, the history of the Mason Boy Scouts. And that'll be actually happening early or later in September. And then in October, we have our Mason home tour coming up. So we have tonight, the Mason's Barns, the Interurban Railway. In July, August, we have the forum on the one-room schools and the presentation about the Mason Esker. In September, we have the forum on learning to read with Dick and Jane on September 4th. Then September 19th, the Antique Appraisal will be here. That's a Sunday. And then the forum on the history of the October 9th, we have a presentation from Sandy Perry about funeral practices in the Mason area for Halloween, October 27th. And then November 10th, Carolyn's going to talk to us about the construction of Mason's homes. We are also going to be talking with a group about possibly doing Christmas play again. So we're back. I heard that. Somebody said that this week. I can't remember who said that, but we're back. We're back. That's for sure. The other thing in your newsletter, what I've started to do, there is a membership application if you want to pass that to your friends. But I put my name and phone number in there for questions. We only answer the phone here maybe on the Saturdays we're open from 1 to 3. So a lot of people are having trouble getting a hold of us. And they used to get a hold of me down at the chamber office, but I'm not there anymore. So there's my cell phone number on there. So if you want to share that with anybody, please feel free to do so I can answer some people's questions. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have for our meeting tonight. Is there anything else that anybody has to bring before the general meeting? If not, we're going to go ahead and begin with our program this evening. We are very lucky to have Jim Mulvany back. Last time Jim was here to talk, it was about apples. I think you were talking about apples the last time you were here. But Jim, actually, of the Michigan Barn Preservation Network. So I urge you to take a look at a little bit more about what that group does in the newsletter. But Jim is going to give us an orientation to barns in general, Michigan barns, and then focus specifically on ones in Ingham County, I think, too, right? Okay, so let's give a round of applause for Jim Mulvany.
Thank you, Doug.
Here's your clicker. Jim, make sure you're back here when you start talking. Okay.
Right. My friend Donnie Olson is here tonight, and we both were good friends with Fred Grant. Many of you would know, preached at Presbyterian Church now many years. Passed away Saturday, right? And his service will be this coming Saturday in East Lansing. Okay, we're gonna have to put my water on here. All right, we'll get organized here. Oh, I got a couple things to pass around. And when we get done, I expect someone to tell me what these little barn artifacts are. Well, I'm gonna start over here. There'll be a test on that later on. And well, just glad to be here. I've always been interested in barns. I'm doing a little ancestry.com with my family most recently, and a lot of interesting things, but I do remember the barn I grew up with was built for or by my great-grandfather, James Elmer Mulvany, and so he's my namesake, and barn's long gone, but the stories are still there. And you know, an interesting thing, I just shared this with you. My great-grandfather and grandmother in March of 1828 got on a boat in Dublin, Ireland, to make a trip across to Quebec to immigrate into Canada. And in reading that, I found a lot of information that I could put together. One, she had 2 children with her, one 5 and one 2. Her remarks were that the voyage was very uneventful because one of them was sick. But then if you put together the other thing, they landed in March of 1828. Then she had another son born in August, and that was a son, John. So she was pregnant all that way over in that little 3x4 cubby hole in the bottom of a ship part. And so you just think about it, what a trip that might have been. And so, okay, now Doug says, I can get my clicker.
Yeah, Jim, I'm going to need you to stand behind the lectern.
Oh,
because they can't see you on the TV.
hey, see me?
The people on the TV.
Okay, now this clicker is still gonna work here. Okay, now these are gonna be Ingham County barns. But first, we're gonna go through just a little review on architecture. I want you to be able to look at a barn when you drive down the road and say, well, what kind of a barn is it? Do you know what kind of a barn it is? You probably have already halfway there to guess the date when it was built. Okay, now this is an old barn. Anybody recognize it? Okay, the name on the barn used to be Lamphere, and it's approximately 2 miles south of Holt on Aurelius Road. And I enjoyed getting the pictures because I got there and said, wow, these little kids are out there sliding downhill. I had to drive back to my house, get my camera and go back, and then they had gone in the house. And so I went in and I said to the mother, she said, could these kids come back out and slide downhill? And you can believe. Okay, so that's the Lamphere barn. Now, this is what kind of a roof structure? A gable. Oh, you're doing good. I'm getting some audience participation. This is a gable built barn. Those are the earliest of barns, are gable barns. Not that they're not still building them, but our very earliest barns are primarily gable barns. Anyone recognize this barn? What kind of barn? Architecturally, a gable barn. Okay. And we don't know by looking at it whether it might be a timber frame gable barn. So we'd have to look inside to find that out. And by the way, it is a timber frame barn. So the structure of it is built with heavy timbers, most usually 10 by 10s that are hewed out of the woodlot and put together with mortise and tendon joints. Probably the strongest barn that ever was built. But that's the Thorburn barn up on Willoughby Road, and maintained by Dr. Guthrie, a veterinarian in the area. Okay, this is a gable structure, but I want you to look at it carefully and tell you that it is a granary. And granaries were always 2 stories high. And I've never been able to figure out exactly why, except I think, I don't think it's so that you could get gravity flow of the material back down, because you had to carry the darn stuff up anyway. But anyway, I think it was probably to keep rodents out, so you could keep the mice and rats out of, if you got clover seed, that'd be pretty expensive stuff if you thrash clover seed. But you're going to keep that up in the upper story of the green. This is was done by Ron Smith, now deceased, but the 2 boys are still maintaining it. Have a museum in the top of it. It's a wonderful farm museum. Okay, now let's go. Okay, what kind of barn do we call this roof structure? A gambrel barn. Gambrel is a French term, and gambrel architecture developed in France, went to England, then to New England, and finally, I'll tell you why we developed the gambrel barn as we move along. And this will belong to L.B. Barr, if you remember L.B. Barr, a strong community member and farmer on that land, and sold to Pete Stid and his brother Joe, and they had hogs in this operation for a long time. Okay, whoop, all right, so get back. Did I get back, clear back? Yeah, okay. Okay, another gambrel barn. Where's it located? You must know where this barn is. There isn't anyone here who hasn't driven by this barn. Oh, it's a slow audience. You got anything, any candy to give them or anything? Okay. Well, that's the George Ellison Jr. barn that's on Dexter Trail as you approach Hawley Road. And a beautiful barn. It belongs to a dentist in town, James Peters. And they don't live in the barn but they have a lot of recreational activities there and a big deck on the barn, and they really enjoy that barn. Okay, let's keep going here. Anybody recognize that barn? Oh, okay. Oh, but we're back to what kind of barn? A gable barn, right? That's the late Cole Emmons barn. Now belongs to Jeannie Emmons. And one thing I just love to do is to get out about 2 o'clock in the morning with a full moon and lay in the wet grass and take moon pictures over barns. And it's an open invitation, and any of you would like to could join me. And there's nothing wrong with bringing a 6-pack along either. Okay, so we'll move along here. That's a timber frame barn with a gambrel barn attached to it in a T formation. So we have a development here, an old barn, timber frame, needed more hay, went to a gambrel barn for additional hay. Okay, and what's this one? Somebody got to know that. Okay, a Gothic arch barn. Okay, so anybody know where this barn is? It was a slow group tonight. It's hot in here. Okay, this barn is on the corner of M52 and M43 between Williamston and Weberville. And that barn belongs to a family known as the Evert, E-V-E-R-T. It has laminated rafters. It was built in 1941, and the rafters are stamped on the inside in the company where they were made in Indiana. And just a beautiful barn. It was a dairy farm for many, many years. And now just kind of used for entertainment. Okay, and anybody recognize that barn? Oh yeah, that's too. The Knutsons recognize their own barn. And it's on fire. I don't know how you got the fire out. Again, I was prepared to lay in the wet grass and take pictures all night, but I got so excited getting that picture, I went home. But okay, this is a timber frame barn, right, folks? Yep. And the interesting thing about this barn is that you can go to the earliest township hall and pull out the 1932 barn survey done by the WPA. Remember the WPA workers program? Yeah, done by the WPA. And this barn is in the survey and tells its size, and it's in only fair condition in 1932. But it's in excellent condition now. I really like the roof, the wreath on there. And I don't know what I'm going to do, because I'd like to use this for the Christmas picture and the Michigan Barn Preservation Network calendar this year, but I've already had the barn in it once. So I'm going to get some argument, but anyway, I got to have a Christmas picture. Well, we'll figure something out. Okay, so, all right, now let's talk about architecture yet again. See, agriculture began to change. I looked at the census data for my grandfather's operation in 1870. He had 4 milch cows. And by the way, they were milch, M-I-L-C-H, milch cows. When the census in 1850, ask you how many milch cows he had. Now they turned into milk cows when some USDA young kid in Washington, D.C. put out the census survey for 1900, and he didn't know there were milch cows, and he called them milk cows. And they've been milk cows ever since. But just a historical fact. Okay, so remember how agriculture got going, the stimulus program that got agriculture going in Michigan. And you must know, that was the fire of Chicago, when it burned the whole city down. And that was the greatest. I wonder why the politicians haven't thought about that for a stimulus project. Because it really got things going. And some of those things that happened was one guy in Detroit developed a train ice car. He developed an ice car so that you could ship carcasses of animals, sheep, cattle, hogs, by rail anywhere in the country in an ice car. And Armour got going in Chicago with one of the largest slaughter plants the world had ever known. As part of that rebuilding growth. Remember, Chicago population doubled every 10 years for about 10 years. And so all of a sudden, you could grow a spring lamb in Ingham County and ship it in November for the holiday season to Chicago by rail and get it anywhere in the United States where there was a market for that. And there was a big market. And so we had many farms in this county that had anywhere from 50 to 100 sheep. And that was a big enterprise. That it would say if you really had a good spring lamb crop and some rain to make pasture, you might be looking for another farm to buy after you sold it because they were that profitable. Okay, so anyway, the farmers had to have more hay as they begin to grow more cattle, more sheep, etc. So everything was about making hay and a lot of it. There's a story about the farmer and his hired man were sitting at the breakfast table one morning and it was just raining down like crazy. And the hired man says, "More rain, more rest." And the farmer said, "What do you say?" He thought real good. He said, "More rain, more grass." And he got out of that one. Okay, so we had to have more hay. Well, the problem with those old gable roof barns was you couldn't mechanize hay material moving because the ceiling wasn't high enough. The ridge wasn't high enough to use a mechanized hay car to lift hay up off the barn floor on the wagon, lift it up in the air and move it into the barn with a hay car. And it would get caught on a tie beam. You couldn't get it over. So two things happened. Well, first of all, they went through the entire state of Michigan and raised almost every barn in the state by 4 feet so that they could use the hay car. And so you might have heard somebody that went to a party where they raised the roof. Well, that's where that old saying comes from. When all those parties in all the neighborhoods, they had a little party to raise the roof. And, it might have broke open the second cider barrel. Maybe. Okay, anyway, they had to have more room. And so one very innovative farmer in Bellefontaine, Ohio, by the name of John Shawver, was a kind of he was just a good carpenter, wasn't an engineer, just a good carpenter. And he would freelance writing every month to a magazine called Builders and Carpenter and Builders. And all those issues from 1969 to 1918 are in the MSU library on the 4th floor in the stacks. And I've gone through every one of them cover to cover. And the history of barns is written there. And John Shawver got his pencil out and decided to use a geometric type truss where it was tied to the barn floor. And then let's see if this will work. Yeah, okay. Okay, here is the purlin going the length of the barn. Here, of course, is the ridge. This is the, whoa, man. Okay. 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 So here is, no, I'm putting wrong. Ah, there we go. Okay, so this is the geometric support for the purlin. So we got this wide open storage for hay. It's clear span. And it was just a tremendous invention. And every barn building company in the country finally stole it. The one thing he did, he promoted this in his magazine, and then to make a little money, he developed a little book that's 5 by 7 with plans in it and a bill of materials for building this barn in any width that you want. And that is in the MSU stacks in the basement. It's wrapped in cellophane, and it's the only guy that's checked it out in 75 years is Jim Mulvany. But I treasure it. It's there. They ain't gonna get rid of it. Anyway, he put this out and he sold it for $1, and it went all over the country. And then furthermore, he started building 1/32 scale models of this barn and shipped them out by rail. So if you wanted to build a barn, you bought a 1/32 model. All you did is lay it out on the barn floor, and you had the angles and you had the geometry. All you had to do is follow it, and you could build this barn. So this, I call it a Shawver truss. And you won't see it, okay? These barns were not built until 1890 and after. So if you don't have this truss and you got a gable barn and you got a timber frame structure, it's gonna predate at least 1880. Okay, there are other telltale things that we'll look at so you can tell the age of a barn. Okay, we'll advance here. And now this is the Gothic arch barn with round laminated rafters. And there's one of our Mason people, John Garish, wrote a history of the MSU Agricultural Engineering Department, which has its originations back in 1911. And on the staff of the MSU Engineering Department was a man by the name of Musselman. He was the department chair. And another man by the name of Floyd Fogel. Floyd Fogel was a carpenter for the Ag Tech 2-year program, where these young fellows came in, and he was the on-site carpenter. And there was a problem going on with barns that the land grant people had to kind of resolve. And that was that this timber was getting tremendously expensive. And you couldn't afford to go in and take a maple tree and make a hewed out log of it anymore because it was too expensive. And dimensional lumber, 2 inches thick by 6 or 4, was cheaper. Furthermore, he also learned that if you laminated this trashy wood together, you could make a very reasonably strong truss. And so the northern farmers could use aspen and poplar and pine. And by laminating that stuff together, they could make a very strong rafter. I want you to note, however, that it also has a truss formation. And these, along also in the Shawver truss, these could be laid out on the barn floor, put together, and then lifted into place for nailing. And so all of a sudden, the old timber frame barn would take like 28 guys or people to build it. And it would take them maybe 14 days or longer to build a barn. 28 people, 14 days, and Mom had to cook for them. Yeah, believe that? She had to cook for them. Yeah. Oh, how do you get the curve? Okay, this lumber would be kind of green and pliable. Pliable enough to go into a jig, nailed, bolted together, 4 inches wide and about 6 inches deep. Okay, so that was done on the barn floor with the use of jigs. So and they all come out the same, see? Oh, good question. Okay, well, anyway, I don't know what I was gonna say. Maybe you know. Pardon? Well, I got one problem. I can't think well, I can't hear either. Okay, so now let's get into Ingham County barns. We're gonna see these different barns. Then you can guess the age of any barn. Oh, thanks, Doug. You made that for me. That's great. I like that. I gotta keep that. Okay, where's this barn? There isn't anybody here that hasn't driven by it this week. Huh? Nobody. What do you guys do when you drive down the road? You're on the cell phone all the time? Okay. This barn is on Hagedorn Road, and it's okay. If you go north on Jefferson Street, you get into Hagedorn Road at the intermediate school. Keep your eye over on the right-hand side of the road while you're going north. And the barn once belonged to Louis Wilson. It's now belongs to his granddaughter, Amy. And if I was going to bet on this, on the oldest barn in Ingham County, I might bet on this one. And it's got the original siding on it. And so I kind of love that old barn. And this is the inside of it. And this is what we mean by, hey, there it is. Oh, but when I do that, okay. Anyway, this is mortise and tenon. Okay, so we have, how do I do that? Right here. Okay. See, this is a hewed out beam. And by the way, why do you think they hewed those things out by hand instead of having sawed, sawn in a sawmill? And remember, this is 1870. In 1870, they didn't have a sawmill that he could even begin to cut a member more than 6 foot long. And these members are, most of them, the length of the barn, 40 feet, 30 feet, 38 wide to be 38 across. And so, and besides that, if you get it sawed at the sawmill, how would you get it home with an 8-foot wagon? They just had to be made in place. And so, by the way, we look at materials. This kind of interesting. That's got to be beech, right? If you're a lumber guy, you know that's beech. This could be maple, could be ash. It's hard to tell. These are called knee braces. Okay. This will tell the date of a barn. Look at the nails that we have. Well, okay, look at the nails that we have. And I call it a forged nail. It's really not a forged nail. It's a square nail. And they took wrought iron and had a machine to cut it. So it was wrought iron laid out in a bar, probably 3/16 of an inch thick, and then the machine just cut them off. And those were all they had for nails until 1870. They came up with a round steel nail. Well, look how it's a okay. All right. Look at the round steel nail. It's been in there long enough. It's backed itself all the way out, and the square nails are still holding. And that was a factual. The builders wouldn't quit using a square forged nail because they held better than a round steel nail like we have today. So if it's got square nails, probably was built before 1875. Okay, let's move on here. This barn has stables for 4 milch cows. And okay, now here's a mate to it. Well, where's this barn? Okemos Road. Okay, Everest Farm. That was Ron Smith's barn. He developed Never Rest Farms, and I'm not sure of the ownership of it now. I think maybe the lady next to it owns the barn. I'm not sure. Okay, if we go inside that barn, look at the rafters, and we're going to look at what timber resources did they have in 1870. And what they had was all the swampland was full of tamarack. Tamarack, it's a very interesting tree in that it is a deciduous hardwood tree. It's not a conifer, but it has needles instead of leaves. It has to have its feet in the water to grow. Now, the interesting thing about tamarack, and I can tell you where you can go see them if you'd like, but anyway, they will grow 75 feet high, and the caliper of the tree will only differ by 3 inches from the base to 75 feet. So they're a long, narrow tree. So they cut these out. They took the tops of them, trimmed them flat on one side, used them for rafters, and then the larger base of it you will find hidden in the framing of the barn elsewhere. The Indians, the natives, did not like that because the tamarack, the reason it's such good lumber is it's full of tannin, just like the sequoia tree in California, heavy tannin. And tannin, you remember, tannin is a protein. You know, if you cut your apple in two, leave it on the counter, it turns brown. That's due to tannin in the apple, which is a protein. And so the Indians, Native Americans, excuse me, be politically correct. The Native Americans depended on to tan their hides to make deer skin soft enough so that you could wear it. To take good heavy beaver skins and make them pliable enough to be usable. They were getting kind of upset with them white people. They were cutting down all the tamarack trees, and what were they going to do? Long forgotten that issue. Okay, here's tamarack. That happens to be growing down by my hometown, Bellevue. But you can see the height they get and how narrow they are. And if you ever go up M66 to Kalkaska in the fall, watch for the true golden color in the trees. That's tamarack. It turns a golden color. All right. Okay, now, so I think both of those barns are probably Civil War era barns, built before 1870 in Allen Township, but I can't define exactly the date that they were built. So we're going to look at another barn in Ingham Township, the Eli Austin barn, and it was built in 1861. This is the barn. Don't pay no attention to how they're using it. Just look at the barn from there, 1861. How do we know that? There's a sandstone cornerstone down in the lower part of the barn with a date in 1861, Eli Austin. So we can't lie on that. Now I'd have a picture of it, but there's 18 tons of soybean meal packed up against it. And Larry MAHS owns a barn, and he said, Jim, if you want to, I'll provide a scoop shovel, but I just haven't got the energy to cover it. And so maybe someday they'll run out of soybean oil now, and I'll get a picture. There were cornerstones in a number of barns. Okay, I want you to look at this barn because, well, number one, let's go back to how that was being used in 1870. Maybe then we'll come back. This is why the ways they're framing in there. Similar, mortise and tenon. Pack is full of, you could get it with 500-pound straw bales. You couldn't tear that barn down if you wanted to. It's just as strong as the day it was built. It's still in use. And okay, so I got the census, the non-population agricultural census data for this farm. And I couldn't go to the state library and get it, but the lady was very helpful. I called the librarian and said, I want the population, a non-population census for Avon Township. And she had it back to me on email in half an hour. Okay, we're gonna look at what old Eli had. And he, by the way, he's line 18, and he's got 80 acres of tillable land, 20 acres of woodland, worth $6,000. Okay, and now we're gonna go on and look what else he had. He had 3 horses. By the way, 3 horses are pretty important. You know, a horse is an organic. It's an organic living thing. It can go lame, and I got to stop and tell you that my dad farmed with 2 horses during the war, and he would have to go out this time of year and mow hay, and the mower was particularly heavy on the tongue, and he had old Jack and Prince. It was the only horses he had. And after they pulled that mower for about a day and a half or 2 days, old Jack had raw meat on the back of his neck from the collar. And he would work an hour trying to get old Jack harnessed again. And what could you do? You're out of business because you only got 2 horses. And you just can't use one. And so 3 horses, it's got meaning if you understand horses. 23 sheep, 2 swine, 200 bushels of winter wheat, 100 bushels of Indian corn, and 265 bushels of oats. That's what he raised that year. And by the way, it's Indian corn until Liberty Hyde Bailey got messing around with hybrid corn. What year, Don? 1875 or 80. Anyway, he made a big headway developing hybrid corn. These guys are still growing Indian corn. Okay, this today is a dairy barn on the Larry and Dan Menace farm. I don't know how many cows they got, 700 or 800. And let's go back now. So what they're doing here, this old barn is still in use, full of straw. And here's their I call it their Cuisinart. You know, all their ration is put together with this machine. Over here, we got linseed oil, cottonseed oil, and whatever else they can buy protein in the cheap form is. We got molasses, we got minerals, we got salt, and it's all being put together. And so this old barn, you just put a lean-to on it, it's worth gold to them. They're still using that barn. But things are changing. You know how we used to have tower silos? This is a silo. These are, this is alfalfa hay leaves. Well, this is alfalfa hay leaves wrapped in plastic, ready to go to the Cuisinart. So you can pick up, you know, one bale, dump it in the Cuisinart, add some linseed, add some other stuff. And alfalfa, you got to recognize now, a cow eats 17 tons of dry matter a year, just a cow. Now, for every cow, you got to have another half a cow in the replacement stream. So we're talking 25 tons of dry matter material to take care of a cow per year. Okay, so it would take materials handling this way. This is superb. They're growing alfalfa, they mow it and harvest it every 28 days. Irregardless of how it's doing, they harvest every 28 days, all summer long. This is their silage. This is corn silage. Again, they can pull it out in the front end load. So look how much barns have changed now since 1870. Okay, this is a Lundberg farm at Holt, Michigan. See, I'm telling you where it is now. Where's this barn at? Oh, okay. Oh, I love this barn. Keith Lundberg and his sister Pat Ardis own this barn. And the old house here is a bed and breakfast. Wonderful place to stay. Beautiful old home. It's, even though it's close by, it's worth it to go up there and stay at her bed and breakfast, just to enjoy that old home. And he'll take you through the barn. It's got, notice that it has a glazed block silo. How am I doing, Doug? I gotta keep going, haven't I? Okay, this is their haymaking operation in the 1940s. What do you want to get that tractor? Is that a co-op? That tractor right there, I'm getting you tractor guys too. A co-op, isn't it? It looks like a co-op. And what a luck, they got two guys loading the hay. I mean, I loaded, from when I was 12 years old, I loaded all the hay in the field. And I didn't have any help. I was all alone on the doggone wagon. And these guys had two men up there. I just can't, I mean, they're rich people. And, huh? Yeah, no, I'll tell you what, it's big enough though. Okay, the other thing you got to put in focus, hay wasn't the only thing you put in the barn. You were harvesting wheat, shock, and then that probably was taken into the barn and stayed there to dry until thrashing time. And there's his right here's his 4-H. He named it Jonah, and I don't know if you should tell us now. He's named it Jonah after a young lady that lived over on the first row of corn that he cultivated every summer. He was always saying, you know, I used to cultivate that row 15 or 20 times a day, you know. And so he named her cow after him. He never saw her again. Never saw her again after that. Okay, don't tell Keith I told you that. He'd kill me, literally. Okay. It's a straw stack. You know, all these old barns had a straw stack. Trash usually on the barn floor. Okay, Bob McCormick's barn. Okay, where's this barn? Oh, you're getting good. It's on Hagedorn Road. And okay, well, I know when that one was built. This is the barn going up in 1932. And the reason I know it's in 1932 is because you see the rope, it was being pulled up into place with a 1932 Chevy that belonged to Floyd Fogel. And right here is George Fogel. He's 10 years old. If you know George. George said he had painted the side of that barn before it was hoisted up in place with a broom and red paint. And he was watching it go up. Yeah. And I asked him one time, I said, George, I thought you were a kind of smart guy, but you know, that kind of thing could come down. Oh, I said, Jim, he said, look, see the window up there? If it comes down, that's exactly where I'm standing. He was a smart guy. George became known. He's on the. There's a national hay car Hall of Fame, and George is on the National Hay Car Hall of Fame. And he liked Loudon hay cars. They had 136 models, and he got a model of every one of them. They're still out there in the barn. Rick takes care of them, and so it's a hay car museum. I don't think I'd be saying too much. I tell you, he bought one hay car that he just had to have for collection, $13,000. And you know what I mean by a hay car? They go across the track in the top of the barn, take the hay up, move it over, drop it down. You know, okay. So he was collecting hay cars all over the state of Michigan, and I tried to help him. And I told one Sunday in church, I said, George, I found you a hay car. Where's it at? I said, well, when we go down 94, Val, she likes to stop at a little old barn that sells dried flowers. And he said, well, where is it? He said, well, you get to the Mattawan exit, you turn off, you go north 1 mile, make a right-hand turn, and it's about a half mile up on a hill. He said, Jim, was it laying on a brush pile? I said, yes. He said, well, who do you think put it on a brush pile? Big guy been there? Anyway, I told him, George, I'm never going to look for another hay car for you ever. Okay, this is inside of the McCormick barn. It used to be a Whipple barn. Somebody by the name of Whipple on that one. And what kind of a truss is this? I'll repeat the question. What kind of a truss is this? You know, I tease say, I go to Methodist church, and every winter we have Bible study classes, and they're all 80 years old. And I said, you know, the Methodist slow learners or what? No, I don't want to embarrass you, but this is a Schauber truss. Look at it. I just told you. Oh, okay. All right. You're forgiven. The other reason we're still studying Bible because we got 4 teachers. So, okay, let's see. All right, here's a better picture of it. All right. Oh, the Brian Russell barn. Now, you got to tell you what's going on now. You probably have not seen this barn. This barn you could have seen in January. It is a gambrel barn, and it doesn't have a purlin in it. It's what they call a self-standing gambrel rafter barn. A very poor quality built. The stone wall is terrible. The original siding is still on there. Okay, so Brian, he kind of liked this barn. So he tore all the siding off. He tore the top off from it. And this is what he had, a standing timber frame barn. That happened in March. He got it all trimmed out. He's got new material there. This is, he's now taken the upper story and built a truss and rebuilt the top. And now he started down at the bottom. The walls have all been retooled, put back in place by an Amish gentleman who lives at Leslie. And just absolutely beautiful work that he does. And this is the barn today. Now, it's located between, on Meridian Road, between Columbia and M36. But if you drive out there to see it, caution. The driveway for the barn is right at the lower edge of a slope that you cannot see oncoming cars coming from the south. And I sit there in the driveway, and every car that comes over there, it takes 3 seconds from the time you can see it until it goes past the driveway. And so if you go out of there, you better be spinning stone. So don't go there. If you want to see the barn, go down to Brown Road, north of the barn, turn in there and you can see it. Okay, just one. Oh, this is a Fogle barn. One of the few dairy farms left in the county. The big Jorgensen barn has been in dairy business for 5 generations, sold out this spring. There are not going to be any dairy cows left in the county, I'm afraid, in a few years. And oh, I love this barn. You know where that is? Oh, okay, well, see the sheep. I love it because it's got the sheep. Okay, so that's Marvin on Lamb Road. Marvin, help me out. First name's Marvin. No. Oh, Marvin's last name. Oh, no, Marvin. He's a member of your tractor club. Okay, anyway, I just love the barn, little gable barn, and there's no sheep there this summer. Okay, and this is Bill Diamond's barn on Diamond Road. And this barn, the old Gable barn, probably an 1870 barn, but this addition on here for about 20, I think 2 rows of stanchions, I think 35 cows. And that was built in 1968, and I know that because I was a county agent, and I can remember Gerald Diamond up here on the top of the joist, getting ready to put the rafters up with his friend Kenny Bibbins. Kenny Bibbins lives on North Every Road, almost up to Howell Road. And they built that barn. I mean, you do milking and take care of the cattle at 10 o'clock, you get free. You go to work on the barn, you work until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then you stop, milk the cows, and get done about 8. But he and Kenny built this barn. So Bill tells a story, Bill Diamond, his son, tells a story that he was taking care of Gerald in his last days at home. And this is kind of sad, but it tells you how farmers felt about their barn. And Gerald knew that he was going back to the hospital for his last time. And he got almost out of the driveway to the road. And he said, Bill, back me up. So I want to see the barn one more time. And I think that story tells a little bit about how guys like their barns. Okay. Oh, this one, well, this is interesting. First of all, we got an air motor windmill. About 60% of all windmills made on barns were air motors, made at Chicago until they opened up a plant in Texas. And this was the I got a moment. I can't bring back the name. This barn is located 1 mile east of 127 on Barnes Road. I can't think of their name. Okay, I'll think of what's them. Okay, anyway, he's standing on the top of the roof of the house, taking a picture. And what do you see over here? The interurban tract. And the interurban tract sees apple trees. And the interurban tract was interesting because Mom could make butter, jump on the interurban tract. She could get it down to Jackson. She could bring it to Lansing to sell. She could take to Ann Arbor. Okay, and sell that for a good price. All right, so this is the barn. It was built with all the material from the farm, from the barn woodlot, and it was 90 foot long, one of the biggest barns in the county at the time it was built, and that was 1885 about. Okay, I'm not going to ask you if you've seen this barn, but you've been by it 100 times. And I love this guy. This is Mr. Douglas. And this barn, she is a gambrel barn with a lean-to on it. Kind of interesting. And I'll tell you where this barn is. It's east of Eden. Believe that? It's a quarter of a mile east of Eden. It just so happens that another Eden occupant was Charles Davis Sr., who had an elevator across from the little country store in the post office in the Garden of Eden. And young Charles Davis Jr. got to know a young lady, the daughter of Mr. Douglas. And they had a ceremony and became one in the farming business. And what do you think? What do you think Charlie's barn would look like if he built one after that? Same kind of architecture. I mean, this is a copy of the other barn, only 2 scales above. Charlie Davis, if you don't know him, he was He run for state representative? Yes, ma'am. Your dad knew him very well. Yes, you're Elton Cork. Well, the reason your dad, Elton Cork, was on the farm marking timber with Charlie about 1,350 feet back in the woodlot when they looked up and saw the house on fire. And they rushed up to the house, but it was long gone. And so that was the end of their home and to rebuild. And after that, Charles ran for state representative. And then he served on the Constitutional Convention and had a desk next to University President John Hanna. They had desks side by side. So, you know, for days and days, they looked at that. One man, one vote, one man, one vote, one woman, one vote, all that stuff. And you can bet that he and John Hanna bent heads together many times. But this barn's still there. If you want to see it with the moon over it, it'd be fine. If you want to go take pictures of the moon over it, be fine. Okay, this is a separator. The reason I got it in here, you're all familiar probably with the Labette farm, and I'm on a couple of sides from done here. This is a thrashing rig on the barn that was located where the Mason Airport is. It was torn down to build the Mason Airport, the Jewett Airport, and the team here is on the water wagon, and up here is the owner. He has a 19.8 case steam engine. Pardon? Yeah, Lawrence. I'm sorry. Yeah, Lawrence. Okay, so this is Lawrence Sweet. Lawrence Sweet standing here. He's the engine is back on the other side of the barn. You can see the belts for it. And one of these guys is Charles Davis, and these two guys are twins, and they're 10 years old. And I got their names over there on the back of the picture in the window. All right, and this is Lawrence Sweet's operation in building a silo, which still stands on Kip Road, 1 mile west of Myers. You see the silo there. The barn got torn down this spring, but the silo is still there. I don't know how it takes 10 tons of dynamite to get out of there. Anyway, this is how they were putting it up. Mr. Sweet was a good blacksmith, and he developed a concrete mixer with stationary wheels on an old barrel. So they put all the Portland cement in there, and the stone, get the horse to walk around the yard and mix it, bring it back around, get another horse to take the cement up in a bucket and dump it in the form. And man, you talk about a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Okay. And this is the new calendar that I'm doing right now, putting together for Michigan Barn Preservation Network. The front cover is either going to be this shot or another one. This is Dr. Van Hoosen's barn, Dr. Sarah Van Hoosen. This barn you can see in the Rochester Hills Museum. Dr. Van Hoosen was the daughter of 2 medical doctors whom they wanted to become, and wanted her to become a medical doctor. And they sent her to University of Chicago. And she came home and she loved the farm, and she was convinced she wanted to stay there. And so she did. And after women's suffrage, she was one of the first in the state of Michigan to run for public office and gained a seat on the Michigan Michigan Board of Agriculture, which is now known as MSU trustees, but at that time it's the Board of Agriculture. And so we're going to kind of bring out the history of women's suffrage with this barn on the front part. She became a nationally known dairy breeder, where her stock that she developed on the farm at Rochester Hills was shipped all over the world. And so I'm doing some research on her. She was awarded a big award in Michigan Farmer in 1933. So I'm digging that up and trying to get it into writing. That's going to be the front cover of the new calendar, 2022. Look forward to it. You could even pay your Michigan Barn Preservation dues if you want to, but pay your Mason historical dues first. That's the end of my story. Doug, I'm all done.
Because of the time, we ask questions of Jim individually at the program. For those of us that, and for our board members. So we want to thank you all for coming out tonight. Let's have another chance.
Oh, 2 pieces. Oh, I got to handle everything this way.